Hello, girls. So, today we'll begin with the Scarlet Letter, the study of it, and we'll analyze the first 10 chapters of the book. So, beginning with the context, I already told you that the book is set in the Puritan society. Please remember that before America became such a mixed bag of cultures, America was also primarily ruled by British, especially the East Coast. East Coast will comprise of the cities of New York, Boston, the area of Massachusetts, and these areas were primarily ruled over by the English, the British. In the 17th century, most of the British society was Puritan society. If you remember having read or studied Milton, you would know that Puritans were very strong headed religious people who believed in a lot of strictures, lot of what would you say, rules, and they always believed in conforming to certain kind of rules laid down for them. Now these rules were not always, let me tell you, these rules were not always righteous. They were very hypocritical, and this hypocrisy seeped into the American land as well. So the area which was called as New England, where the Salem witch trials happened. Okay, now these trials, the witch trials, happened because of this thing, because these people felt that some of the people of the society might not be conforming to the church, might not be conforming to the strictures laid by the church. Hence these women were persecuted. They were put on a pedestal, on a scaffold, and they were given death. They were literally burnt off. In that century, Hawthorne places his novel, he sets his novel in that century, and his protagonist Hester is very similar to any other woman of 17th century who was put on a pedestal for not conforming to the society. So, but the novel was published in 1850, and it belongs to the literary period of transcendentalism. Why is that? You have to go back to the background that I've given you and read what transcendentalism was and who Hawthorne was and why he wrote such a novel. Okay? Okay, I'll give you a brief summary since it's required that you know the plot. So even if you have not read the novel, you will be acquainted with the plot line. But this still doesn't rid you of the responsibility of reading the text. You have to read the text in order to understand the rest of the novel. Okay? Because I will not give the intricate details in the summary. Okay. So the novel traces the life of Hester Prynne. Hester is a young girl who is shown to come out of prison with an infant daughter. This is where the novel begins. She is incriminated for having committed adultery. And through the characters of the story, we come to know that Hester's husband was away on scholarly adventures and he never came home. This is why Hester fell in love with another man and she had a daughter from this apparently unholy alliance. Okay, so we come to know that Hester's husband never actually came to Boston with her. He was from Europe, but he never came to Boston with her, and in the absence of that husband, Hester falls in love with another man, and this is the crime that she has committed, falling in love with another man. This is her adultery, her sin apparently. Chillingworth, a man in the crowd, is recognized as Hester's husband. Okay, a shocked Chillingworth refuses to acknowledge Hester as his wife and gets desperate to know the man with whom she committed adultery. Hester refuses to give the man's name. She keeps quiet and she does not tell anybody who the man is. And eventually, after serving time in the prison for 3 years, she moves to the outskirts of the town with her daughter Pearl, and she starts working as a seamstress. A seamstress is a maid. In rich English households, they required somebody to help the women with their dresses. So that woman would usually be called a seamstress. Chillingworth starts posing as a doctor because he's obsessed with finding out who this man is. Okay, and he starts earning his living, but he is posing as a doctor. He's a fraud. He's not exactly a doctor. He does not have the knowledge, but he finds the people of Boston extremely gullible because they were all hypocrites and they were ready to take in anything, just believe on anything. And through this charade of his, he comes across Father Dimmesdale. Okay? Father Dimmesdale is a young ailing priest. He's a young priest, but he is ailing. He's suffering from some illness. Now, after treating him for a bit, Chillingworth discovers that Dimmesdale has an A carved over his chest, which resembles the letter A that Hester wears on her dress. Okay, he suspects that Dimmesdale is probably the man Hester had an affair with. Now, out of vengeance, Chillingworth starts giving ruthless care to Dimmesdale. Okay, he starts giving him wrong medicines. He starts making his health deteriorate further. Okay, so it's like sin is feeding off sin. Okay, it's not like Chillingworth is an absolutely innocent man. He's also sinful, and so is Dimmesdale, who commits the sin of hiding his love, of hiding his crime, and letting somebody else suffer for his crimes. But eventually, the guilt becomes too heavy for the priest, and he decides to confess his secret to the world. Now, eventually, Dimmesdale confesses his crime and he professes his love for Hester. But the illness, the ailment that he's suffering from, wins over everything else, and he dies right after confessing his crime. Now, Hester eventually leaves with Pearl and she goes to Europe. Chillingworth also dies after some time, but he leaves a small fortune to Pearl, trying to redeem himself of all the crimes that he has committed. Now, Hester returns to Massachusetts after 20 years. After 20 years, she comes back and she lives in the same cabin as before, the same cabin which she was living in. She still wears the letter A on her gown, on her dress. Pearl eventually gets married into a wealthy family in Europe. She never comes back. And when Hester dies, she is buried right next to Father Dimmesdale. Their graves are inscribed with the letter A, which Hester wears till her death. Coming on to analysis of chapter 1 to 10. The first 10 chapters of the novel are basically a testimony to the Hippocratic Puritan society. The Puritans claim to be righteous and God-fearing, yet they seem to thrive on sin and punishment. Now, in the first chapter itself, we are shown a scene where a lady is standing on a scaffold and the people around her are so disgusting that they are constantly demanding death for this woman, this young woman who has an infant in her arms. Okay, they don't want to know the reason behind her crimes. In fact, if it is a crime, that great a crime, that she should be given death. Okay, but they just need a way to incriminate her, to sort of project their own insecurities and their own issues with the society onto her. Okay, so they are basically thriving off this. This is proved as the people of Salem enjoy having Hester on the scaffold, and they demand death for her crime of adultery. The Puritans' hypocrisy is further elucidated in the chapters when Hester and Paul move to the outskirts of the town to work for Governor Bellingham. Okay? Now, Governor Bellingham is the judge who presides over Hester's case also. Okay? So, Hester starts working for Governor Bellingham, but Governor Bellingham constantly keeps shunning Hester. Okay? He does not treat her in the right manner as a fellow human being should be treated. Right? So the high and mighty of the society, they don't mind if these sinners work for them, but they would not show proper acceptance to them. His hypocrisy is further given a way out when we get to know that Bellingham's sister is actually a witch. She practices occult and indulges into black magic. Okay, but all of that is behind the curtains, as in it's not revealed to the society. Yet as a reader we get to know all of these things because all of these things are happening in the wood. The occult is happening, the practice is happening in the wood, in the forest, amidst the nature, and not in the posh home of Bellingham. So in the first 10 chapters, the reader is also acquainted with Pearl. Now, Pearl is the most brightest of the souls in the entire story, but she seems to be a complete opposite of her mother. She's defiant and strong headed. And at the age of 3, imagine at the age of 3, she refuses to conform to the norms of the society. She's a rebel. Okay? She doesn't get to, she doesn't mind if the kids are shunning her. She just tells them off and goes off on her own way. She is extremely individual and extremely independent. But people in the novel say this thing, that this attitude of her is because of a demonic possession. Now, sadly, Hester also feels at times that this might be true and that Pearl might actually be possessed. Okay, her own mother also gets this feeling that she might be actually possessed. This is a result of the people constantly constantly forcing a person to be something that they're not. Okay, it happens a lot of time. It's human psychology. When you're told constantly that you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, the other person, the individual, eventually starts believing that yes, they might be this. Okay, but since Pearl is actually a very different child, she doesn't let go of her individuality, but her mother apparently does fall prey to this weird notion. And as a reader, we understand that Pearl is the only soul in the novel who is completely innocent and transparent. She doesn't have any secrets. She doesn't want to have any secrets. In fact, all she wants is all the secrets to be revealed to her. Okay? The most important symbol of A on Hester's clothes plays a huge role in shaping the lives of all the primary characters here. Okay? How? Hester makes it a symbol of her individuality instead of making it a symbol of her crime. How does she do that? She wears it in the color scarlet. She has it extra embroidered. Okay, make it look rich and bold so it's visible to everybody. Okay, if a person is wearing a symbol in shame, they would make sure that the symbol is as small as possible so that not many people get to know it. But not Hester. She makes it extremely bold and she wants people to see that letter A on her. Pearl, who is unaware of what the symbol means, is genuinely intrigued to the extent that she starts relating everything around her with the symbol. Even when she's playing with the graves, she's constantly picking up things around her and forming the letter A. Okay. Dimsdale has a similar letter carved on his chest. He literally carves that letter on his chest to redeem or to sort of atone for his crimes. Okay, and this is discovered by the end of chapter 10. Okay, by the end of the first 10 chapters, we discover that they that Dimsdale has this letter carved on his chest. Chillingworth, who is so bent upon finding his wife's adultery and her crimes and trying to find out who was the partner in her crime, that this constant hatred and vengeance that is constantly brewing in his heart alters his physical appearance. Okay, and it turns him into a cruel old man. So you see how the symbol has started affecting people by the end of chapter 10. I hope that you have read the first 10 chapters of the novel. If you haven't, please go through the lecture and go through the chapters too. On Monday, we'll continue with chapters 11 to 20, and I would hope that you finish reading at least till chapter 20 by the end of the week. I will see you on Monday. This is all for today. Thank you.